Welcome, Danny, to the Dating Touchly podcast. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I am so excited. You found me in the DMs and you were like, I want to talk to you. And at first I was kind of like, I'm not taking new guests right now. And then you followed up and I love that you did that because now we're here.
Perfect. Yeah, me
Yeah.
too.
See the dating skills do translate into other areas of life, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Follow up, man. Send that double text.
Yes. Okay, the first question I ask everyone is what are you being intentional about or what do you want to be more intentional about in life?
Wow. I think helping people. So I kind of have a little bit of a Buddhist philosophy, and life is suffering. And I think we're here to reduce suffering for others as much as possible. And I've taken the route to do that in matchmaking and help people find their person because I think there's a lot of loneliness and pain associated with being alone.
Yeah. Wow. I'm smiling because my husband says life is suffering all the time. I don't think he says it in the way you're meaning it. I think he says it more the way of get over it. Um, but yeah, that's I love that you want to help people and you are taking your own route to addressing some of the loneliness that we're experiencing in dating and just socially in general. It's just like it's really there. You really can feel it, can't you? And you're in Austin, right?
Yeah, I'm in
Yeah.
Austin, and in particular, in a city like Austin, it's very difficult to date. And I think in our modern era, it's as difficult as it's ever been.
Yeah, can you say a little bit more about why Austin specifically is hard to date in? Because I always hear that I've heard both, that Austin's great for dating because it has such a vibrant social kind of container, or like it's horrible for dating because the guys are all like Peter Pans.
Yep, absolutely. So I think it's that infinite option problem. There are so many amazing, beautiful, smart people in Austin who are ambitious and successful. And people are having a hard time investing in any one person. And to talk a little bit about this infinite option problem, we're bombarded on Instagram with all of these bright, shiny people who are really attractive. And they live in your city. And in the past, we weren't exposed to as many people
That's
as
so
we
true.
are today. And so it's on social media and it's on online dating, and we don't know when to stop. We think that if we date in for an infinite amount of time, eventually we will be able to get one of those people and we can end up with one of those nines or tens. And I think about this in the context of a closed system versus an open system.
Okay.
And in high school, that's a closed system. There was like 600 people in my class. There were two or three girls that were in my wheelhouse. And if I could make one of them my girlfriend, great, right?
600? Okay, there were 24 in my class, but yeah, go on.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Where did you go? I tell you?
I went to a Waldorf school, so
Okay, gotcha.
it was small, but 600 is so many. So, okay, you said there were, like, a few women in your high school class.
Yeah, you kind of know where you fall in the hierarchy, and there's like two or three girls, right, that you could date. You end up dating one of them, and things are good, right? So that's a closed system. But if you
Right.
have an open system, like in Austin, where you're on Instagram or anywhere really, when you're on Instagram or online dating, when it feels like there's this misperception that there's an infinite number of options, that's an open system. And so it ends up feeling like gambling, where even if you go out on a date with a great person, you think, well, okay, there's an infinite number of options out there, which isn't true. And I'm just going to keep dating until I find someone better. And Logan Ury talks about this concept of someone going out on a hinge date and it's a great date and they go home and they start swiping again because they want to see what else is out there.
Yeah, I talk about this on my show a lot. I'm very aligned with you in that the abundance of options does make dating hard, and then building the muscle of knowing when to stop is really important, and that's something I had to do in my journey of going out with, like, over 60 people, in a
Yeah.
short amount of time, and I did have to really, like, decide, like, "Okay, I actually found someone who fit everything I'm looking for, and there is no reason to keep going." I couldn't justify it at that point.
Yeah, well, I have a question about that.
Yeah.
So, was it everything you were looking for? And did you modify what you were looking for over time to determine, okay, I'm going to invest in this person?
I didn't modify what I was looking for after I met my now husband. I had a very set parameters of, like, what I was looking for, and of course, like, when I say set, I wasn't, like wasn't black and white, but it did not change that much in my 1 year of dating. It was very much like, "These are my needs, I'm looking for someone who meets my needs," and that's it. I wasn't like, I was ready to accept everything else, and I think that's what made me successful in my journey because in a lot of ways, and I'm not saying this is a bad way, I did settle, as in I stopped looking, and that's great.
Well, I think that there's a big difference between settling and compromising. And I love what you said about my needs versus
Yeah.
wants. You have a list of your needs, which are deal breakers, right? Like if
Yes,
someone
yeah,
doesn't meet those
non-negotiables.
needs,
Yep,
yeah. And so I don't view that as settling. I view
yeah.
that as compromising on wants, right? But if you get your needs met, there's again, like you said, there's no reason to keep going.
Exactly. I think you're spot on about the challenges, but often, which again applies to all open systems out there. I guess the whole world is an open system.
At this
And,
point,
you know,
yeah.
we do have the advantage in college, I guess, of that having that closed system when you're dating potentially for a very serious long-term relationship at that age. But then once you're out in the world, you've got to do a little extra legwork. And that could be going on the apps, meeting people in person, or hiring a matchmaker, which is what you're doing.
Yes. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
we're gonna talk about compatibility, but can you just tell us a little bit about your matchmaking process and why is it different?
So my matchmaking process, I have people fill out a questionnaire that takes about 20 minutes and it tells me about who they are. I'm less interested in what they think they want because a lot of us aren't great at knowing what we want and what matters. So I want to find out about who they are. So I find out, what is your attachment style? What are your core values? What's your lifestyle like? How often do you exercise? Do you want a traditional relationship on a scale from 1 to 5 in terms of gender roles? Do you want a traditional lifestyle on a scale from 1 to 5? Would you rather live out in the suburbs and have 2.5
Mm,
kids, or find the best schools, or do you want to live on a commune in Peru? And so I find out about who you are, and then I match people based on what I find out in the data.
amazing, and we're gonna get into all that, but I have to say, I read through this questionnaire and I'm so surprised you said 20 minutes because that thing is long. I was thinking maybe that would take me 2 hours. Maybe
Well,
not.
if you're doing it on your laptop,
Yeah, I guess I
it's
read
20
it
minutes, yeah.
exports to 60 pages, just so you know.
Good to know. Okay.
Um I haven't done a deep dive into all the different ways matchmaking works. So I don't know if the questionnaire is like outside the norm of how matchmaking and matchmakers work. But I do find it interesting that you are focused on so many different aspects of who someone is from attachment style to lifestyle to you also ask what are your favorite podcasts and TV shows. You also had Enneagram, Myers-Briggs results, high school group that you were in, hobbies, and if you volunteer, if you like scary movies, those were some of the things that jumped out to me in your questionnaire that were like, "Huh, never think that would matter." Why does it matter if I like scary movies or not?
So interestingly enough, I read a book called Dataclysm by Christian Rudder, and this is the guy who created OkCupid. And so he had loads of data, and I actually took that from that book. So whether you like scary movies or dark comedies actually correlates to compatibility. I don't know why, but it is. And I think it has something to do with maybe personality and sense of humor. And I think sense of humor is connected to intelligence, and so I think there is something maybe deeper underlying that, but
Right.
those are interesting data points.
When I saw the Enneagram Myers-Briggs, I kinda side-eyed you a little bit because 'cause I'm like, "Really?" But, yeah, so obviously you're not matching people just based on their Myers-Briggs results. So how does that come into play, though? Like, how much weight does that have?
So to be honest, it doesn't have a lot of weight,
Okay.
but I do think that it could be a plus factor.
Mm,
And there are certain questions that are weighted more heavily in the questionnaire than others. So attachment style is a big one. I'm not going to match up a super avoidantly attached person with a super anxiously attached person. Now, I think there would be a big spark. I think that they would get into a relationship. Would it be a long lasting relationship? No. And that's the whole point of what I'm
right.
doing. So some things are weighted more than others. Enneagram and Myers Briggs, not as much.
Well, you did something kind of sneaky in your questionnaire that I noticed is that you asked about attachment style, but then you also ask kind of the questions that you would use to figure out your attachment style. So I feel like just in case people don't know or they're like maybe they're overly confident that they're super secure and then they so I thought that was actually really great. I'm like, because what if I was reading through, I'm like, what if I think I'm really secure, but I'm not? And it's like, oh, he's got me covered.
You're disclosing all my secrets. So part of
Sorry.
that, no, it's all good. Yeah, that's to decide whether someone is really introspective and they know
Right.
about
Well, yeah,
themselves.
I did notice the emphasis on self-awareness and emotional intelligence in your questionnaire. I thought that was really interesting. Are you working with men, women? Who are you working with? Who's taking this questionnaire?
Both.
Okay.
So the traditional matchmaking model is that a matchmaker will generally have male clients, and those male clients will spend $10,000 for 10 dates over a 6 month period. That's a pretty typical contract. And so the problem with matchmaking is that it's only accessible to a very small number of people who can afford it. And also in that model, you have a matchmaker who's incentivized just to find very attractive women for this male client. And the male client says, great, you're doing your job. I'm attracted to these women. I want to go out on these dates. But there's not as much attention paid to compatibility and whether they'll actually work out. So
Interesting.
I wanted to create an equal playing field. I wanted to create something where both men and women are interested in joining this service because A, it's a place where everybody's looking for long term, which is another problem in a city like Austin. And it focuses on things that matter for long term compatibility.
Right, right. You have this questionnaire. What are you learning as a matchmaker on your end? What is the data showing you?
Yeah, so I didn't realize how much height mattered. And when I first started this matchmaking service, I thought, okay, I'm hearing a lot about how height matters. Women want men who are 6 feet or taller. And so I was sending women out on dates with men who were like maybe their height or an inch shorter or something like that. And these guys were like 5'9", 5'10", right? Like not even like super short. And what I was finding was they were reporting back, hey, we're really compatible. I like this guy. I'm even going to give it another date or two. But I got to be honest, my question mark is on the height. And then sure enough, 2 or 3 dates later, they would say, I couldn't get over it. And so the height thing really matters considerably more than I thought. And
Wow.
then I originally wasn't even asking what people's height criteria was. And I'm doing that now. And I'm finding in the data that women are reporting, they're not going to even go consider guys who are shorter than 5'10". Every once in a while, I'll have a woman who says, sure, like 5'9". But
Wow, that blows my mind as a 5'2" girly.
yeah,
I mean, I'm like, "Give me all your 5'8" tech guys. I'll take them." Like, that's sounds great. 5'7", sure. I mean, I was like, if you guys were 5'5", it's fine. Like, I wish this wasn't such a thing. Obviously,
same.
I'm shorter, so I have, like, a higher wider range of, like, I guess, what would be acceptable to me. I don't know if I would date a guy who was 5'2", but maybe I would. Like, you know?
Well, I think that's another problem with modern dating.
Yeah.
There are a couple issues. One is that there's so much more media influence that people are talking about, oh, 6 feet or taller is the way to go. So then other people get influenced like, oh, I should be dating 6 feet or taller. And so
Right.
the conversation starts to be amplified about, what is considered attractive. And
Yeah,
so
it's like a status thing.
yes, exactly. I also think that because online dating is such a prevalent way of dating these days, when people put in height restrictions in their preferences, they're not even seeing some of the people that they would be compatible with in the dating pool. And so, really, for some of these shorter guys, in person is the way to go because they're going to be able to meet people that are otherwise gatekeeping on the apps.
Yes, that is accurate, and it's unfortunate, and I'm, really curious, just as a person in the dating world, what do you think the attitude should be around height? What's the advice you wanna give to people around this?
Yeah,
Especially the women listening.
sure. Yeah. I think height matters less than you think. And I think that once you get to know someone and they show other attractive qualities, you will be attracted to them. I understand that height matters to a certain extent, but if you're 5'5", you don't need to date a 6 foot tall guy or even a 5'10" guy. Date that 5'9" or 5'8" guy. He's
Yeah.
still taller than you. You're not going to feel like he's a backpacker or whatever
For
people are saying.
sure, for sure. Backpack. Oh my god. For sure. Some people want a backpack. I also have gotten so many DMs whenever this comes up that I have a lot of women who are like, "I'm 5'10" and my boyfriend's 5'7" or something," and it's like, "It's fine." And I like the advice from matchmaker Maria. She says, she's taller than her husband, and she says, "You get over never getting over it." Like, there are some things you're gonna have in your relationship with your partner that will bug you for the rest of your life, but you have to kinda get over just never getting over it.
Yeah, it goes back to the wants versus needs that we were
Yeah.
talking
Oh,
about
yeah.
before. Yeah, might be a want, but is it really a need? The other
Yeah.
thing that I've been thinking about recently is looking where other people aren't looking. And so people are saying, okay, I want to find this guy who's 6 foot tall or over and super successful and fit and all of this stuff. And it's like, well, what if you found all of those qualities, but in a guy who is 5'8" or 5'9"? All of these other women aren't looking for that guy.
Right,
So you can find
right.
this amazing diamond in the rough if you just look in other
100%.
places where other people aren't looking.
That's the exact strategy I use in the dating apps. I knew, like, these guys had very mid profiles that just were kind of okay, and I'm sure they weren't getting a lot of matches, but I knew that there are a lot of great guys behind very okay profiles.
Very smart.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
very smart.
it works, and I'm telling you, like, you just kinda have to push through that voice in your head that's like, "Oh, but, like, this his picture's weird." It's like, "Maybe in person he'll be better," and it usually is like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I actually have a story about that where, so as part of my matchmaking service, I purposely don't give a lot of information about the person I'm matching them with. So I'll literally send one picture and I'll
Wow.
explain what they matched up on, but I won't say anything about how old they are, what their job is, anything like that. But this woman recognized the guy that I was setting her up with from Hinge, and she had swiped left on him on Hinge. And she's like, well, Danny thinks that we'd be a match. What the hell? I'll go out on this date. And her feedback after the date was he was way cuter in person, like than what I saw on the apps. And we had a great conversation. Like, this is a great guy. So, I mean, it
Yeah,
really matters meeting up with someone in person versus on the app.
I love that. Just go on the date,
Yeah.
people. Just go on the date. So tell me, okay, so you have all this data on people. Now, what are you looking for? What is your definition of compatibility? How do you think of it?
Yeah, I think there are three main categories of compatibility. There's physical attraction, mental attraction, and then long-term compatibility factors. And so if you look through my questionnaire, some of these things like your hobbies, your interests, what podcasts you listen to, those types of things are mental attraction, right? And then there are long-term compatibility factors like what's your attachment style, what are your core values, how much time do you want to spend alone, how much time do you want to spend with your family. Those types of things are long-term compatibility factors. And then the physical attraction dynamic, there's an art to that.
It's not a science. No, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I also get people's Instagrams and I can look through people's Instagram accounts and kind of get a sense of who they are. I mean, again, with a grain of salt because
Yeah.
Instagram
It's
is
yeah.
Instagram, right? There's a trick to this though that someone taught me is if you look at photos that someone is tagged in versus the photos that they
Yeah.
put on their profile, you can get more of a sense of the next layer.
That's an interesting tip. I mean, like, I never really did any Instagram stalking when I was dating, I'm gonna be honest. I was ready to just show up on the date and make my own opinion based on who they showed up as. But yes, I think there's a lot of benefit to doing that. I'm not saying my way is the way you should go for people listening. Yeah.
I actually think your way is the better way because that is how I
Well,
have set up my model is people it's essentially a blind date. People have seen one picture, they go on this date not knowing anything about this person, and then they show up with curiosity. They're like, I want to find out about this person from this person. And they haven't created this narrative about
yeah.
this person based on a handful of pictures.
Unfortunately, for women, it's more of a safety issue. That's why they're
Mm,
looking, I think, honestly, more just to, like, who am I going out with and are they a creep? And that's yeah,
that
that's
makes
just
sense.
yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
really why women are and I'm saying I didn't do that, and I was lucky I didn't run into any dangerous situations. I did have a question though, going back to you said you don't give a lot of information to the people you're setting up with each other. Do they just trust that the person they're meeting is gonna be in the age range they want? Like, are you kind of saying, like, "I'm gonna match you with someone in your desired age range?"
So I don't tell them anything about that. But behind the scenes, yeah. I mean, there
Yeah.
are a handful of preferences that they'll put in the questionnaire that I have in the questionnaire that they'll answer. And I'm not going to match them up with someone who's considerably outside of
Yeah.
any of their preferences.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, I feel like that does require a lot of trust of like, okay, like I know he's not gonna set me up with like a 50-year-old when I said my parameter
Yeah.
was 40. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I do want to comment one thing on that because I did just have a conversation with a woman last week who's 39, and I asked her, "What is the age range that you have on Hinge?" And she said 35 to 45. And I said, "Well, what about that 46-year-old guy who has all of the qualities that you're looking for, who's active and attractive and successful? He's just 1 year older than that upper limit you have on Hinge." And she was like, "Yeah, that kind of makes sense." I was like, "Look, put your parameter up to 50." And she was like, "Oh." And I was like, "You don't have to match with all of them.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
you
fair.
get to look through more profiles and you can determine whether or not you're interested."
I'm so with you on that. At a certain age, it's like how you've taken care of yourself your whole life is going to really show through, and I'm sure there are a lot of really young looking 50-year-olds out there, like, why not? Okay, so you mentioned the 3 aspects of compatibility are attraction.
Physical attraction, mental attraction, and long-term
Okay.
compatibility factors.
So let's just say we don't all have the pleasure of working with you, Danny, and we are out there on our own dating. What are some ways we can start to judge compatibility for ourselves in the early dating process?
First off, having a list of what your needs are versus what your wants are is super important. And the vast majority of people have not done that. It's a moving target. They don't know really what they need. And I think that that exercise really starts with, how do you want to feel in a relationship? Do you want to feel supported? Do you want to feel calm? Whatever it is, when you're going out on a date with someone and you're starting to date this person, if you're feeling differently than how you want to feel in a relationship and how you show up in a relationship, then that's probably not the right person for you. And I think that that's where the needs stem from.
Yes. I fully agree. I think that kind of speaks to that 3rd category of compatibility of that, like, long-term, the deeper stuff. But I
Mhm.
feel like in early dating, we also kind of touch more of that, like, physical and mental attraction, those pieces. So when you're looking at your questionnaire and you see, like, are you matching people up like, "Oh, they both like scary movies," for example, or they both love this one podcast. Is that, like, how you are matching people? Or, like, how much do similar interests really matter?
Yeah, I mean, people get along when they have similar interests. So, and again, I don't know why this particularly works, but the scary movie and the dark comedy variables actually correlate quite a bit
Really?
to
So
good
you're wait, so
matches.
okay, so wait, just spell it out. So you're saying that 2 people who like dark comedy and scary movies on a date will have a better date than people who are opposite on that?
Yeah,
Really? I don't know if I agree. Why do you think that?
if that's the only thing they match up on,
Well, yeah.
no, I mean, that's not gonna
Yeah,
work,
no.
right? But if they have those 2 things and they watch similar TV shows, there's a big difference between someone
Mm,
who loves The Big Bang Theory and someone who loves, like, Parks and Recreation or White Lotus, right? And so there are personality traits that come through in some of these preferences that may seem superficial, but does tell you a deeper story.
got it. So, okay, on the other side, what are some clear signs of incompatibility that we should look for?
On a date or in the
Oh,
questionnaire?
on a date, like, for people listening who are out there dating.
Yeah. So I think that, again, it's about how you're feeling on this date. And if someone is making you feel uncomfortable, or
Mhm.
you don't feel good with how you're showing up, then that's a good sign that it's not a fit. I do want to give a caveat though, because I keep hearing this thing over and over again about how, oh, there just wasn't a spark on the date and the date kind of felt like an interview. And I'm like, well, what did you do on this date? And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
we had a coffee for an hour. And I'm like, okay, but how much spark and chemistry are you going to create on a date that's like coffee for an hour? And don't get me wrong, I actually love a coffee date, but there are things that you can do to make the date not feel like an interview and to generate some chemistry. And I'll also say that even if you don't generate that chemistry on the first date, but that person's at least interesting and a quality person, go out on the second date. As a default, you should go out on the second date.
I am so with you on that. It's funny because I got married, but I would say I'm really investing in my friendships lately, and I will say even a coffee friend date isn't that fun for me. Like, I did a lot of coffee dates, but it's way better when we're like, okay, we start with coffee and then we go somewhere else. We go to a thrift store, we go to like get some like
Yes.
little dim sum or something, and then we like it's like you kind of go bop around. It's way more fun than just like sitting and having coffee with a friend, and I think that applies to dating too.
I agree 100%. Who else says dating should be playful? And it should be. It should be fun and playful. And I feel like nowadays people go out on a date and they're dreading it. And
Yeah.
it, it's not fun. But even if someone's not a great date, if you go in with the mentality of, I want to learn one new thing from this person, and you can always learn something new. And that's
Yes.
fun. Like it's a
Yes, it's
little
so
bit of
much
a
more fun.
challenge. Yeah.
So, we're gonna get into some date stuff too, because I know you work some of your work also involves creating amazing dates. But before we wrap up on compatibility, what's just her kind of main tip for people who are dating now to make sure they're focusing on the right things when it comes to compatibility? Because I can imagine just sitting I have been on dates where I'm like, I think this person is nice to talk to, but we don't have anything really in common.
Yeah.
But both want to be in a long term relationship and we both see kids in our future. So it's like, okay, there's some overlap, but then there's less overlap in other areas. So, how do we navigate that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Esther Perel talks about how in modern dating, we expect our partners to fill all of our cups. And they need to be our best friend and our confidant and our intellectual equal and funny and the best lover we've ever had. And this person has to fulfill everything for us. And I she encourages and I would encourage people to think about what again are the needs, what do I need my partner to fulfill for me in a romantic relationship, and what can I get from the people around me. So I love that you're talking about investing in your friendships, and I don't know anything about your romantic relationship with your husband, but I imagine that some of your cups are filled from your friends or your family, and some of your cups are filled from your romantic partner. But I would find it hard to believe in any relationship that their partner is filling everything, all of their needs and wants. And
Yeah.
so I would encourage people to sit down and really think about, if they overlap in some ways and not others, do they overlap in the right ways? And is that enough? And again, there's that difference between settling and compromising. Compromising is great. Settling, in terms of if you have deal breakers and then you're settling,
Yes.
like that's not a
Yes.
good thing.
Yeah. Why is compatibility even important? Why do you even care about this so much?
Yeah. So I was realizing just through the statistics on marriage rates and why marriages are failing that there has to be a better way to match people together for longevity. So right now, if we have like a 50% or over 50% marriage failure rate, and we know that predominantly marriages are failing because of things like incompatibility regarding sex, like how important sex is in a relationship and how often you want to have sex. Money is a big one. So
Yeah.
one person wants to save more, one person wants to spend more, or one person makes more. And like, the male is threatened by a female making more money, or she actually doesn't want to be making more money than him. Kids, religion, like there are a number of big reasons why relationships or marriages fail. So I was thinking, well, what if we can, instead of focusing just on that chemistry that draws us together, and we go, oh, like I feel this spark with this person. We have a lot in common. We both want kids. Let's go. And it's like, well, what if we can find out up front some of these other big issues and
Mhm.
work ourselves backwards to
Right.
find out what's going to make us a good fit? And then we can literally increase the marriage success rate over time.
I'm so with you, and, you really nailed it, and love just isn't enough. I think 2 incompatible people can love each other very much, and it won't work because of that.
Well, I've been in those
Yeah, same.
situations.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. My longest relationship was 3.5 years with someone who was my best friend, like, legitimately just
Yeah.
an amazing person, and we had completely different attachment styles, and especially at the time, I was, like, version 1.0 of Danny, and I don't think
Aw.
anybody could be in a relationship with me at that time, but, again, amazing person, but we were incompatible, and as much as we were in love with each other, it absolutely wasn't enough.
Yeah. So you also have date cards, right?
I
Okay.
do.
The
Yeah.
date cards are specific to Austin, which is like, what the hell, Danny? Come on. But okay, they look really fun. I wish I lived in Austin so I could try one. I guess I'm just curious, are there any dates that kind of help you discover compatibility more? We kind of touch on this with like more than a coffee date, but like tell me about your thought process around designing dates.
Yeah, so great question. And I think that there are ways to create chemistry and create or determine compatibility via some of these dates. So, again, going back to what we were talking about, how much chemistry can you create on a first date where you're sitting across the table from each other over a coffee, right? And actually, let me back up for a second because I do want to give some practical advice on how to
Yeah.
avoid the interview date.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Tell us.
Okay, so first off, sitting side by side is huge. So if you can sit at the bar side by side, or if you can get the coffee to go and go on a walk on the trail and you're walking side by side, that's so great. And also, if you're going for a walk, like you're experiencing, shifts in location and you can comment on things and it's just easier and it flows more and it doesn't feel like an interview. If you are going to sit down at a table, sit at the corners, don't sit
Yes.
across from each other. Two more things. Be playful and flirty. And what that is just kind of teasing. And I think there's a difference between teasing and negging. And negging is
For
when
sure.
you're like teasing someone about something that they would be really insecure about, usually something with their appearance. But teasing is when you're kind of making fun of someone for something that they're not going to really care about. So, like, if they say what their favorite movie is and it's Shrek, and it's like, your favorite movie is a cartoon, like,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
teasing, right?
Right.
And then implement touch. So, like, when you are teasing someone or someone teases you, like, touch their hand or touch their shoulder for a second, right?
A
And so
second.
that doesn't
Yeah.
feel like an interview. And then ask questions that are more interesting, that aren't just how many siblings do you have? I like to make guesses about people. So I'll say, kind of get the feeling that you might be the youngest. True or not true? And they'll be like, that is true. How did you know? And then even
I
if it's not
yes.
true, they'll be like, no, I'm the oldest. Why did you think that? And then it becomes this kind of playful conversation.
This works in other scenarios too. I just met my brother's girlfriend a few weeks ago and like we had like a sit down brunch together. And to make it a little more fun, I was like, I'm just gonna guess your deal. Like because instead of just being like, so where are you from? So
Yeah,
how many you
that's
know?
awesome.
Yeah. And it was fun and I was right on a lot of things.
You're
Yeah. Yeah.
great.
Yeah, so I was like, that actually does make a conversation way more playful and you can build a little bit more of that tension that is required for chemistry. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. That's
Hopefully you have
awesome.
someone who can play along with you though, because I've definitely been on some dates where they're just not game for any kind of teasing, guessing, whatever, and it's just like, ugh, okay.
Well, then you know that person's not a good
Yeah.
fit for you, right? So,
It's just funny hearing you talk about this because literally with my first date with my husband was a call like this, as it was a Zoom call.
really?
Where we were just sitting yeah, we were just sitting and talking. I didn't even have, like, a drink or anything. I just we were just chatting. But our first real in-person date was what you're describing. We had beers, it was, like, 2 in the afternoon, we were sitting next to each other, then we took a walk around a park for a while, and then we got boba after that, and then did more walking. So it was, like, multi-location date.
So I'm curious, what was it on that call that actually made you want to go and see him in person?
Literally nothing, Danny. I thought that I would never hear from him again. I was like, "That was fine."
That's
But you know
amazing.
what? But this is the thing. It was more about what happened after the call, right? We had a good conversation. The hour went by pretty quick. It was for an hour, right? That's a good sign. If I'm
Yeah,
comfortable talking to a total stranger for an hour, I mean, which I'm doing right now, but like it's different. I do this professionally. But like if it's going by quickly and if it's easy, if there's questions being asked on both ends, and I know that's like, okay, I'll give them another. That was the rule. Give them another date. And I did.
I love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's such a great example. Like, it was fine.
It was
right?
fine.
And then you went out on the date in person and it was much better.
Sometimes the bar is nothing went wrong and no deal breaker showed up. If that happens, then great. And if I'm not like repulsed, like I was neutral. I'm like, okay, yeah, I know.
The bar is low.
It's really well, that's the thing. After dating so much and realizing that wanting to feel actually attracted to someone was completely unrealistic on the first meeting because I knew for me, I need to get to know them more to feel attracted to them. So I wasn't expecting to and didn't take that as like a bad sign.
That's so smart and good on
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So this is where I think the second date comes into play. I
right.
think that there are ways you can create chemistry. So there was actually this study done in the 70s where they had a woman interviewing men over a wobbly suspension bridge up in the air. And then in the other group, it was on a much more stable bridge lower to the ground. And she gave her number to the men in both groups. And the men who were interviewed on the wobbly suspension bridge, really high in the air, contacted her in much higher numbers. And so the conclusion is that people will attribute the adrenaline that they're feeling to chemistry with that person. And so you can, or we can, use that principle on our dates. So go on a date to a gun range. Go do a cold plunge. I live in Texas, so
Yeah, fair.
do a cold plunge. Like do something. Go rock climbing. Do some. That was one of my favorite dates that I used to take people on when I was a
Rock
climber.
climbing.
Because yeah, you go outside and it might be their first time climbing, or at least their first time climbing outside, and you have them, 20 feet up in the air dangling. I mean, like their adrenaline's going, and so that's a great way to establish some chemistry on the date.
I feel like you just unlocked in my brain how The Bachelor and The Bachelorette works. Like they go on these dates. Do you watch the show? Like
I
on
don't
The
know.
Bachelor, it's like one guy with like 20 women and they're going on dates with helicopters, rock climbing, cold plunge for sure. Like all the like they're under waterfalls, they're like jumping off buildings together. And it's like, oh, that's how they fall in love in 6 weeks.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. It's all the adrenaline going.
So what are some more chill dates? We're not jumping off buildings here. Maybe we're axering, maybe we're doing some stuff like that, but like what are some of your ideas that you love to suggest
Yeah.
for dates?
So, my number one tip for guys is to learn how to dance. A guy who knows how to dance, it is a superpower. Yeah. Because think about it, like a guy who knows how to dance is literally leading a woman around a dance floor and she just gives up and follows. And she doesn't have to think, she just turns off her brain and can just feel the movement. That is so fun for a woman. I mean, I've been told, and it's fun for a guy to be in his masculine and be leading. And I feel like that creates a lot of beautiful tension and chemistry. And you're touching, and like not in a way that is overtly sexual. And
Right.
another great date is acro yoga because it's playful. There's a lot of vulnerability and trust happening. You're touching. That's super fun.
Oh my gosh. I like the least flexible person. I would not that would not be me in my best. I don't think I've ever heard acro yoga being suggested. And also are you saying go dancing on a first date or no?
No.
Yeah.
So my playbook, and it doesn't have to be everyone's playbook, is I would do cocktails or a coffee for the first date. And it would be an hour or two. Sometimes if the date went extremely well, it could go for longer. But the idea was I just want to get a vibe check. Like, can I have a conversation with this person? Do I enjoy being in their presence? Am I curious about this person? And then the second date was let's do an activity together. Let's do something like one of my favorite dates in Austin is the Texas Toy Museum, which has a scavenger hunt with toys. And so you end up
That's
talking
fun.
about, yeah, so you end up talking about your childhood and your favorite toys and your favorite candy and, all sorts of stuff. And then it's an arcade as well. So you get to play all these old games and it's super fun.
Do you feel like Austin was just made for dating?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know about relationships, but dating, yeah, for sure.
I love that. And yeah, sorry, you were taking us through your playbook. So first date, coffee, cocktails, second date, something like the toy museum.
Yeah, something fun and something playful. And again, so much more chemistry or possibility of chemistry on a second date where you're doing an activity together. And then I think the third date is more about just spending quality time. Like I would usually do a cocktail and then a show. I think on a
Mhm.
third date, it's fine to go to like a comedy show.
That's what
And
we did.
oh, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, the recipe works, right?
Oh, the recipe definitely works. I think, yeah, first date was like what I told you. Our second date was that we went to a tapas place, and I like tapas or any shareable menu because you get to like go in with a plan together, and you get to like
Mhm.
learn about their menu strategy and their ordering strategy. Like, are they a sharer? Are they like kind of picky? What like are they adventurous? Will they go for the octopus? Like,
Wow,
what's
there's a
going
lot
on?
of testing going on there.
Yeah, so I was a huge fan of that, and then we did the comedy show for third date, but my favorite date we did was I know this is funny that I know the number, our 7th date was a bakery crawl.
Tell me more about
So,
that.
yeah, it was actually through meetup.com. I would regularly find things to go to and just buy 2 tickets to them even if I didn't have a date. So that was
Yeah.
an example of that, and basically, it was like a meetup where, someone had organized, a food tour essentially. So every stop, we would have a little croissant, a little coffee, whatever, and we got to walk around Seattle together in a big group also. So there was a social aspect as
Oh,
well, but it was so great, and after that date was the first time we had sex, so it worked.
hell yeah, that's awesome. So, okay, touching on people being in a group.
Yeah.
So, one thing that I love is watching my partner, whoever I'm on a date with, interact with other people because that does tell you a lot about who they are. And so, if even if you're on a first date and you're sitting at the bar, strike a conversation up with the bartender and then see how your date
Yes.
interacts with them. And I
Yeah.
think that there's something that can be really attractive about seeing someone shine with other people and seeing other people interested in talking to your date. So
Yes.
that's another way to create
To
chemistry.
give your date opportunities to see how awesome you are in
Mhm.
whatever you're awesome at. Maybe it's acro yoga, maybe it's talking to the bartender, whatever it is. Put yourself in those positions. And one thing that kind of occurred to me as we were chatting about this is like there are a lot of women I talk to who are dating who really like put the dinner date on a pedestal as a first date. Like, I want him to take me out to dinner. I want a reservation. And I'm just like, I just don't think it makes sense in early dating to do that.
I agree with you 100%. I think that it ends up burning out guys who are spending a
Mhm.
lot of time, energy, money on these first date dinner dates, which is not good. And then I think it also puts pressure on women because I had a friend of mine who was saying that the date didn't go well, but because he had taken her out to this fancy meal, he's walking her to her car and she's feeling this pressure to kiss him. And I just don't think it's good for anybody. I think it should just be cocktails, a coffee, a walk for a first date, just something easy and not as much. I know people want the investment on the first date, but you can have some, but not a ton.
It's gotta be a vibe check. You have to also decide if you want to invest in them as a woman. Like,
Yeah,
yeah. So, okay, we have to wrap up soon, but I just need to know your opinion on this because you said kissing on a first date.
yeah,
So, something you mentioned offline is that this is a hot take you had, that we should wait to have heavy makeout sessions in early dating.
yeah.
Okay, wait, how long and why?
So I think that there is this concept that sex is going to happen on the third date, maybe the fourth. And it's like this unsaid thing.
I feel like this entered the dating zeitgeist in, like, the How I Met Your Mother years. Like, I don't know, like, or something
I
like
didn't
that.
watch that
Maybe
show.
or
Was that
maybe
like a
earlier, I don't know. It just is, like, definitely an unspoken rule that we should
gotcha?
not have. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that there are situations where, sure, there are some fuckboys who are putting on a good show and they're acting like they want to be in a relationship or potentially be in a relationship and then they sleep with a woman and then they're gone. But I actually think that there's a large percentage of guys who feel that chemistry, they think they're interested legitimately, and then they feel terrible when they sleep with someone and the next day they're like, "Oh god, I'm actually not as interested in this person as I thought I was." And I think, and I've been in that position where I've been the guy where I'm like, I really thought I was into her and it was just lust. And I think that by waiting, say, 6 or 7 dates, something along those lines, which ends up equating, if you're going out once a week or so, that ends up being a month or two, right?
Yeah.
And I think that by doing that, you're going to weed out the people who are not interested in long term. And it may not even be, their intention to do anything nefarious. So in my own experience, I remember I was seeing a woman who I was very attracted to. We were having fun on the first few dates. And, when I would go in for a kiss, we'd kiss, but it wasn't like a make out. And by the fifth or sixth date, I realized that, oh, I'm actually really glad we didn't do anything or sleep together, because I realized I'm not that into her. And it made breaking things off so much easier, because
Mm.
we didn't cross any sort of line where someone's feelings would get particularly hurt because of things getting too physical and expectations being created.
Wow, okay. So you're kinda saying, like, don't even have this heavy makeout or, like, where you're like it's like it could go a lot further kinda moment, because if that happens too early and then down the line you realize they are not a fit for you, yeah, it's gonna be harder to kinda give them that news.
Exactly. So I just think taking a little bit of time, it doesn't have to be a crazy amount of time,
No,
but
yeah.
yeah,
I'm
but
with you.
people are sleeping together 2 or 3 weeks into dating, and look, there's nothing wrong with that if you're not looking for long term, or you're okay with it just ending whatever.
Right, you might not have, like, that you might not hold sex at that level, I definitely had a lot of casual sex and didn't. I wouldn't have been upset if someone broke it off with me, like, the day after. That was just me, because often I
Yeah,
did that, and, I had to change my ways. I actually had to do the same thing, I had to delay it so that I would not do that anymore. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yesterday, I had a guy in my DMs who was calling himself out. He was like, "This keeps happening. Sexual chemistry and the whole sex part of it really matters to me, but I'm being the bad guy because I keep sleeping with women a little too early and I don't know what to do." He's like, "Can I ever not be the bad guy?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you have to wait longer." Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and, the unfortunate thing is that, while guys should put the brakes on, we don't generally.
But it's both. It's hard when you're in the moment and you're really feeling that chemistry with someone, it is really hard to put the brakes on. It's hard to stop that ball from rolling down the hill, at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I feel historically
Yeah.
that women have been the ones to put on the brakes, and it's not fair, but that's kind of the situation we're in, is that if a woman wants a long-term relationship, this is something that she should consider, is, look, even if this guy is into me and wants to progress, and I want to too,
Yeah.
unfortunately, I need to be the one that puts the brakes on.
I would just say be like if we were kissing, I'd be like, "This is as far as I wanna go." And that
Mhm.
was the expectation. Every guy I said that to was respectful of that, luckily.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, I got some good ones with my strategy.
I love it. I love it. Can you give me, like, the quick
Yeah.
breakdown of your strategy? Because I've watched some of your content and love it, but I don't know your whole story and your strategy. And I know that's a big
Yeah.
question, but maybe you can break down, like,
I'll
the
get
top 3 tips or something?
Yeah, I've got the elevator pitch. So, after my long-term relationship ended, I wanted to approach dating with more intention and but part of that was also casting a much wider net just to gain experience and confidence and skills in the process. And so I was mostly dating, not looking for a relationship just for that experience. With that level of openness, I ended up meeting a lot of great guys and a lot of boring guys and a lot of guys who didn't ask me questions, whatever. That was the worst of it. And, I wasn't aiming for a certain number of first dates, but I was aiming to meet as many people as I could and get off the apps. So I didn't mind taking charge and saying I want to meet. I didn't mind planning dates. I didn't mind doing that labor that a lot of women don't like to do. Not saying you should do that. And ultimately I met my husband and I didn't know he was going to be my husband when I met him, obviously.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. So when you expanded your net, what did you learn from that?
I just learned that there are a lot of kind, respectful, interesting people out there, and I didn't feel attracted to most of them. I didn't click with most of them, but that doesn't make them bad. It doesn't mean the dating pool is spoiled or anything. It's just like I'm not going to get along with everyone. That's fine.
Yeah.
It's just neutral, and I had fun.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I mean, dating should be fun, and I think
Yes.
that expanding your net, you're right, you're gonna end up going on dates with people where you're like, "Yeah, I kinda knew I wasn't gonna be interested in this person," but there are plenty of instances where you're gonna be surprised, and you're gonna be more attracted to a person or more interested in a person than you otherwise would have thought.
Oh, yeah, there were sometimes moments where I didn't actually feel any attraction till the very last minute of a date with someone, and,
There
like,
you go.
yeah, you never know. I don't know, there were a few times actually where I just didn't really feel it until I kissed them at the end of the day. It's like, "Oh, there it is." Like, "Okay,
Yeah.
I guess I'm into them." So
Yeah, and by the way, like, kissing's good. Like, even on a first date, we actually get information. Apparently, the science is
Oh, yeah,
that we
there's,
get.
like, biological information passing through your saliva, like, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
crazy.
so I'm a fan of kissing, it's just the
Yeah.
heavy make out part that, we should
I
at least be careful of.
I appreciate your insight on that, and I appreciated all the insights you shared with me. I'm sorry, we have to wrap it up. We're out
Yeah,
of
no
time.
worries.
This has been so great. Where can people find you?
So my Instagram account is Crux Compatible, so at Crux Compatible, and my website is www.cruxcompatible.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Danny. This has been wonderful.